Hi students, welcome to another class of grade 5 English. Today I am here with a wonderful poem, namely The Fly, written by Walter de la Murray. At the end of the class, you will be able to recite and enjoy the poem, to note the use of comparisons, to identify the imaginary in the poem, to see the world from another perspective. The author of the poem The Fly is Walter de la Murray. He was an English poet, short story writer, and a novelist. He often wrote under the pen name Walter Ramal. Many of his poems and stories were written for children. He received several awards for his literary works. Before starting the poem, just we can have a look about the poem. The poem is from the collection Songs of Childhood. In this poem, the speaker thinks about how things that are small to us would look enormous to a fly. He uses different imagery to explain how everything would look different, bigger, brighter, or frightening to the tiny creature. Now let's listen to the poem first.
The fly. How large unto the tiny fly must little things appear. A rosebud like a feather bed, its prickle like a spear. A dewdrop like a looking glass, a hair like a golden wire. The smallest grain of mustard seed as fierce as coals of fire. A loaf of bread, a lofty hill, a wasp, a cruel leopard, and specks of salt as bright to see as lambkins to a shepherd. By Walter de la Mare.
This poem is about how normal everyday object must look very different to a tiny creature like a fly. The speaker invites us to reconsider the beauty and enormity of both natural and man-made objects, and we are reminded that the size of thing is only a matter of perspective. That is, what's small to us is huge to a fly, and so by extension what's normally huge to us may actually be small from a different point of view. Let's see what is the meaning of each stanza. Here in the first stanza, let's look how the poet have described the things. The speaker introduced his main idea with an exclamation point, saying that everything must look so huge to a little fly. How large unto the tiny fly must little things appear. Here we can see a rose bud like a feather bed. A rose petals look like a furniture, a bed to the fly. So the thing which we feel little will be bigger in size for the fly. Now let's see. Its prickles like a spear. The thorn of a rose look like a dangerous weapon to the fly. Here, these images invite us to consider how a change of perspective can cause beautiful things to be amplified, like the flower that become a luxurious bed, as well as frightening things to become even more menacing, like the throne that become a spear. Now let's see what is in the second stanza. The second stanza lists three more objects and describe what they must look like to a fly. A drop of dew is like a full-sized mirror to look into. A dewdrop like a looking glass. Here looking glass means mirror. A piece of hair is like a shining thread of wire. A hair like golden wire. And a tiny mustard seed seemed to have the size and strength of a chunk of burning coal. The smallest grain of mustard seed has fierce as coal of fire. These three images take the tiny relativity insignificant objects around us and bring our views so close to them that they become beautiful and powerful. Here the dewdrops, which is small to our eyes, is considered as a glass. A golden hair is considered into golden wire. The smallest grain of mustard like a big burning coal. Finally, the third stanza lists three more comparisons. Food can look like a huge landscape to a fly, a loaf of bread, a lofty hill. Next, see a wasp, a cruel leopard. Here, another insect can be a terrible predator, a wasp, a cruel leopard. Here, wasp is compared to a leopard, maybe because of the color or the attacking of that animal. Lastly, little grains of salt can seem as dear as baby lambs, and the specks of salt as bright to see as lambkins to a shepherd. These final images show us how valuable our food is, how lucky we are to have the advantages of size over a dangerous creature like a wasp, and again how something as common as a grain of salt can be beautiful, bright, and sweet if we are willing to change our perspective. Now let's move on to the activity section. Today we are going to find the rhyming scheme present in the poem. One I have done as an example. Appear, spear. You have to find out two more sets of rhyming words are there. Find out it from the poem and write it in the notebook. Through this poem, we come across so many visual imaginary. There were pleasant and unpleasant things were there. Now let's find out what are the pleasant imaginary used here. Here I have given two examples. Rosebud like feather bed, dewdrop like mirror. Just go on through the poem. What are the other visual imaginary with pleasant mind you can see there? Do you have any guess? Okay, we will discuss it. A strand of hair like golden wire, a loaf of bread like hill, and grains of salt like clams. All these things can be used for pleasant. Now, what is the unpleasant here? A throne like a spear, mustard seed like coals of fire, and a wasp like a cruel leopard. I hope you all got it now. Now let's move on to the color imaginary use here. Let's see what are they. Two examples I have given here. Red rosebuds, golden off strand of hair. Next, reddish black of mustard seed, brown of a loaf of bread, white grains of salt. So this all image come to your mind when we learn the poem, isn't it? So here visual imaginary was there and color imaginary was also there. This all help us to understand and have a clear picture of the things discussed in the poem. Next we are going to learn similes and metaphor. Do you have any guess what is a simile? And what is a metaphor? Simile and metaphor is a figure of speech. The figure of speech used to give a clear picture of the poem. What is a simile? A simile is a comparison between two things using the words like or as. Example is here. Her mind is like a sponge, absorbing all the details. See, here her mind is compared to a sponge. So, we can say this is an example of simile. Simply when we compare two things using like, the word like or the word as, it can be called simile. Now what is a metaphor? Metaphor is a comparison between two things where one is said to be another. Her mind is a sponge that absorbs all the details. In simile, we compare two things using like or as. But here in the metaphor, we are comparing things without the use of like and as, and here where one is said to be the other. In a simile, we are telling that one thing is another. Her mind is a sponge. Her mind is a sponge. Here we didn't compare the things, but here we said mind is like a sponge. In this lesson we are going to learn about similes. So let's look a few more examples of it. Like two sparrows in a hurricane. Here two sparrows has cold as ice, like a rolling stone, whose fleece was white as snow, like a bird up in the sky, like a bird in a cage. These all are a few more examples of similes. Now let's move on to our textual exercise in page number 24. Complete these similes with the correct word from the box. In the box you can see the words like mouse, bird, lion, lamp, bee. Some sentences are given there. You have to complete it. As brave as a dash. As busy as a dash. As quiet as a dash. As gentle as a dash. As free as a dash. So my dear students, you have to complete the activity before entering our classroom. I will be asking the questions. So students, I hope you all understood whatever we have learned today. We will be discussing this once again in our classroom. Dear students, thank you for listening. Thank you. Have a nice day. Hope to meet you soon with another chapter.